Hello, everyone. Welcome. So my name is Monica Wasif, and I am the Audience Development Executive for PR Newswire. Thank you for joining us and welcome to this year's webinar. What a year it's been, but we've made it. We've survived the lockdown and we're all struggling to get back to reality together. Unless you're in Queensland and have no idea what the lockdown feels like, in which case we're all very jealous. Before we get started though, I'm first going to hand over to our country manager, Tash, for a quick intro into who we are and what we're all about. Over to you, Tash.
Awesome, thanks, Mon. Morning, everyone. As mentioned, my name is Tash McRae and I'm the country manager across Australia and New Zealand. Before we provide you with key takeaways on the ultimate do's and don'ts for PR pros, I wanted to quickly introduce you to PR Newswire Cision. So Cision aims to help PR and marketing and social media professionals stay ahead of the changing media landscape, prove business values with metrics that matter, and provide tools that help the modern communicator. Since 2014, we've made approximately $3 billion worth of acquisitions, which you can see on the left-hand side, buying the best-in-breed databases, social media management platforms, traditional and social monitoring, as well as human analyzed insight solutions. A few noteworthy brands that you may be familiar with: Gorkana, which was quite big in the UK, Trendkite, and most recently in June of this year was Brandwatch, which provides our customers with AI-enriched social analytics. So most of these brands have now been integrated into our software, which is called Cision Communication Cloud. Next slide, please, Mo. So about PR Newswire. So PR Newswire is one of Cision's companies and is the commercial newswire distribution business. We work with over 75,000 companies distributing their press releases to relevant media. As you can see here, we reach over 170 countries and also translate your announcements into 40 different languages if you need. We have offices in 24 countries across Americas, EMEA, and APAC. So specifically in APAC, we have 15 offices with over 300 plus staff, and dedicated audience development experts continually expanding our partnerships with key media to ensure your message reaches relevant targeted audiences. Next slide, please, Mon. So here are our key services. We've been talking about distribution earlier, which is PR Newswire's core business, but we also have other services such as content planning and creation. So it includes writing of press releases, paid media placements, providing 3 to 12 month comms strategies for those that need it. Through the Cision Comms Cloud, you can use our influencer database, as well as the monitoring and analytics part of the platform helps you to monitor and optimize your PR campaigns across the different media channels. And finally, on the social media management side, we have Brandwatch that offers a depth of insight and understanding to build a successful strategy. And then Falcon has a breadth of functionality and the streamlined workflows needed for companies to take effective action on the social side. So that's it for me. That's our quick high-level view on the PR Newswire Cision side. Thanks again for joining, and we hope you enjoy the webinar. Over to you, Mon.
Thanks, Tash. So today we're all here to learn a little bit about how to play the PR game. And here at PRN, we've learned that telling your story is about more than just feeding into the traditional news cycle. It's about delivering relevant content at the right time, in the right place, and most importantly, in the way that people want to hear it. So for today, our webinar will focus on the do's and don'ts for PR pros. Joining us, we have Julia Newbold, who is the managing editor of Money Magazine, and Mark Eggleton, who is the co-founder and managing editor of New Romans and contributing editor of the Australian Financial Review. Together, they'll guide us through the ins and outs of creating engaging content that resonates with readers. Before we start though, we have a few housekeeping items. Throughout the session, if you have any questions, please feel free to use the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen, and we'll do our best to answer as many questions as possible. We're going to run through today's webinar with the content that's been prepared by our speakers, but there will be allocated time for a live Q&A at the end. There will also be a survey available at the end of the webinar, so we'll ask you to please spare some time to provide some feedback, including any information that you'd like us to cover for our next webinar. And finally, the recording of today's session will be sent to each of you in about 2 days' time. And with that, I'd like to kick things off by introducing our first speaker, Julia Newbold. Julia comes with more than 20 years experience in the financial media industry. She is the author of the award-winning book, The Joy of Money, and is also a host of the Friends with Money podcast series. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you. Thank you, Monica. Nice to be here today. I guess the first thing is I'll tell you a little bit about Money Magazine and who our audience is. Money Magazine is Australia's longest running and most read personal finance magazine. We're about to, our November issue is the 250th issue of the magazine. And actually, it was set up really to equalise the playing field for investors. So what the intention was, well, what my intention is to provide equity for everyone who wants to learn about personal finance and make their money work harder, to give the information that helps that. You know, our tagline is creating financial freedom, which is what we think money is all about. You know, you have your values, you know what you want to achieve, and we give you the ideas that help you make the decisions about your money to help you get there. Our readership really is the mum and dad investors. They're very focused on money, which is great. To have an engaged audience is fantastic. You know, when money first came out all those years ago, there wasn't a lot of information in that field, and people did not really talk about money like they do today. People didn't talk about their super funds, and they didn't compare, you know, their investment portfolios and that with friends, which does happen now. Our audience is aged 25 to 60. It's a little bit more skewed towards younger people online and a little bit older in the magazine. Most of our readers are subscribers, so they're invested in the magazine and they look forward to it. And we do get a lot of reader questions in, which is fantastic. Now, while our readers are very engaged with their money, they're not necessarily the high earners. So when we're looking at articles, we have to be quite broad in how we talk about money. People are interested in doing the most, and that's not always about investing. A lot of it's about saving and strategy and the financial planning issues. And people are looking for the information that will provide a good return and long-term wealth. So looking to protect their money. They're not interested in fancy products or high earners, or, you know, while they might want to learn about crypto just to know what it is, they're not necessarily going to invest in something like that. They're pretty sensible investors and very conservative. But they do want the information. They want to know what's out there. They want to hear from experts in the field. They want to hear how other people have made it. And I guess it's interesting, if you're interested in working with us, to read some of the questions that come in to ask Paul. So Paul Clitheroe really started the magazine, and it stayed very similar to the program that was presented from the early 90s, which was on Channel 9, and Money Magazine worked alongside to give more detailed articles from the segments that were filmed. The idea was just to get the conversation happening and to let people understand a bit more about money. So we haven't changed a great deal from that, but when you read the questions that our readers come up with, you know, can I retire? Should I invest in property? Should I invest in ETFs? You know, what should I do with my inheritance? That really gets to the nub of who our readers are. So if you want to learn more about it, that's a good place to start. We have set sections of the magazine, and we pretty much typically focus on real estate, property, shares, investing in super, financial planning issues, and small business. We do that regularly. So if you've got topics that fit into any of those areas, that's great. And we're really driven by the old-fashioned lessons of, you know, don't get rich quick. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. And basically just earn more than you spend. And, you know, those lessons come up time and time again, and people want to learn the same things and have it so that they can explain to their children, you know, what's the benefit of compound interest and those kinds of topics. So for our magazine, our monthly magazine, you know, it's a print magazine, and there's a bit of a a time issue of putting articles in. So we like to have evergreen content. And we also use that for the website. So we have a mix of newsy things, but mainly it's evergreen. It's looking at topics that are topical, but that can last for a while. We're not going to come out quickly. So, have a thought of whether the issue is going to work if it's waiting a few weeks to come out. Online, we also like to move our content around, and we might put the top 5 articles up again at Christmas times and things like that. So we also look for evergreen, but we look for relevant things now as well. We have 11 magazines a year. The December-January is a combined issue, and it's our best of the best issue, which is best super funds, best bank accounts, best credit cards, best managed funds, etc. That content we don't deal with directly. We get it in, we talk to the fund managers, but if you want to be included, it's not about contacting us, it's about getting on the list so that you are judged. Our EDMs go out on Wednesdays and Saturdays, and we use social media to promote the stories that we use. We also have paid EDMs every so often, which might cover a specific topic, which might be superannuation, or it could be crypto, or something else. We've also this year started our Friends with Money podcast. The idea of that is to have a mix of financial planning type articles or conversations, talk to fund managers, and also to cover issues that we might not otherwise cover. We some of the best ones that we've had have been about nominating a beneficiary in super, things that people can understand better when it's in a conversation than written. Over Christmas, I talk to a lot of people each month or each week for our hot seat, which is getting people who are outside the industry to talk about their ideas about money, just to give it a bit more realism, in that it's not about financial professionals all the time and the way they look at money, but this is what other people want to achieve with their money. And so we're always interested in content that will resonate with readers. They'll email and they'll tell us they liked a story, or they didn't like a story, or it could have included this or that. And that's really great. So what we do want from you is thoughtful content that's tailored to our readership. When I receive something, and there's a lot that I do receive, I want to know that you've at least paid attention and read some of our content already, so that you're not coming in cold and just spamming us. Also, exclusives obviously are very attractive. If you have a new investment product or new idea, or you're thinking differently about a segment of the market, whether it be aged care or anything, we want to hear from you. I don't need to have the full presentation straight away. Just, email a couple of ideas. This is what we're thinking. This is what we're doing. Are you interested? And then we can work together on something. First person pieces are fantastic. For example, why it's a good idea to write a will. And we have a couple of sections in the magazine where it is first person talking about a particular issue. We're also obviously interested in issues in the industry that affect people. So, ESG products are something today. And we've also been trying to keep on top of, lockdown issues and finances in lockdown and so on. What we don't want is spam content, irrelevant stuff like a new wine range, new gins, a new mining site in the Pilbara. Like, where would I use that? If you've seen the magazine, you can see that that's not what we have. I don't want some, dodgy deals that people can do. If they, click on a link that they can, get a discount or whatever. We need to talk about stuff like that. And with crypto and NFTs, we do want to cover it because I think it's important to keep our readers feeling that they're knowledgeable about everything in the investment market, but we're not going to promote things like that. We are very confined by our readership, who are conservative, so we're not going to push anything that may not work for them. We'll tell them about it, but we like to, be very factual in that. And on that same note, I'm very passionate about the language and making sure that we don't give jargon to people that they can't understand. I was guilty this week. I had a reader email me and say, oh, you had an article on page 57 and you used FUM. What does that mean? And I kind of thought funds under management, that's such a common term in our industry. And yet it was good to be pulled up by someone who said, well, I'm not familiar with it. So that's good. So, other issues that we might use cover where we're not pushing are things like reverse mortgages. We think readers should know things like that. It's about educating our readers so that when they do see the information, they know about it. So the key points in the year that might act as triggers are January, we look at getting your house in order. Here we are starting. We've got, we'll typically have someone talking about top 50 share investments in the top 50 places to buy property. In March, we're going to this year have a women-focused issue for International Women's Day. We haven't had one before, but I think it might be a nice idea and we'll see how it goes. June's always the end of financial year, but saying that we need to get content in pretty early if it's going to go in for the June issue, because June will go to print at the beginning of May. So we're really needing to look at things like that in April. So if you have ideas and you want them for particular issues, get in touch and I can give you an idea of when we would need that. September, we might look at spring property. Property's always a big one with our investors. They do like property. And it's interesting, it's not always in the city. We have a lot of readers that live in regional areas. And when we get letters in, it's often, I've got a property here that's worth 500,000, which is almost paid off. And I've got an investment property for 300,000. Well, we know they don't live in the city. You can't live in Melbourne, Sydney or Brisbane and have those. Other issues that we cover, technology, fintech. We want to know how people can do things through fintech. Career is going to be an important one for us next year. This year, I spoke about the hot seat that we run. Next year, I'm going to split it, do every second week, there'll be a hot seat. And in those alternate weeks, I want to focus on a career, like how do you get into, for example, being a barrister, because that's so important in the way that people make money. Career and money is just tied together. And it's that education piece again, that if you don't have friends or family that are working in certain areas, you might not have any idea how you get into that field and what you do if you're at the bottom rung and you're learning about it. How do you then move up? How do you meet people and so on? The fire community is something that really worked well for us this year. We've done it once before, but we looked at people who want to, it's the financially independent retire early cohort. And, it can be quite polarizing. People look at these people who are saving a great deal of money so that they don't have to work beyond 40 or 35 or 50 or whatever it is. But it's just a fascinating area. For me, I know I couldn't do it, but I love to read about other people's ideas. And I think that's what gets people interested in. We've done it in the magazine, we've done it online, and we've done it in our podcasts. So we'll be continuing that next year. Healthcare and insurance are topics as well that, it's about finance and it's about your general finances. How do you afford healthcare? Should you get private healthcare? What's the difference? Have case studies. We've also done pet insurance, which affects a lot of people. And the whole insurance side of it, we haven't done a lot of it to date, but we're looking to do a little bit more next year. Personally, I like to get emails. I find that, no matter when I'm working, I can either, I'm very old school, I'll print them out if I want to keep them and, use them for a later time, but it's easier for me to see them. And sure, follow up with a phone call just to make sure, and it's a good reminder sometimes, but if it's interesting, I'll keep it aside and I will remember it when you call. I don't need images. We don't generally run, unless I've asked for a headshot of someone, we don't normally put in photos of any kind. We use our own graphics. And for tailored content, just send an email with your basic idea and a few details, your specialty, what your client maybe can talk about, and what your client's expertise is on the subject. And then please follow through, meet the deadlines that are agreed on, and write to length. The amount of times that I've asked for 200 words and someone gives me 3, it's not like we can stretch the magazine and have a pull-out section just to fit it in. You know, this is what we need. So happy to answer questions.
Thanks for that, Julia. We might actually just save the questions for the end for everybody. But thank you for that insight. That was incredible, especially the breakdown of the year, the content based for each sort of month. That's so helpful. Next, I'd like to welcome Mark to share his thoughts on the do's and don'ts for our industry. Mark has over 25 years experience with some of the world's leading publishers, including Nine Publishing, News Corp, The Economist Group, and the Financial Times. He's currently managing editor of New Romans, as well as the contributing editor at the Australian Financial Review and a commercial editor at the Financial Times. Welcome, Mark.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me along. Thanks for everyone having me along. Good morning to you. It's still morning, I assume. I just want to point out that I've failed in retiring by 35, 40 or 50. So I'll aim for 60 now. Just first up about the AFR, just to give you a bit of an idea. The AFR is the Australian Financial Review. It's Australia's premier national financial daily. I like to say it's also our premier national newspaper, but that's something to be argued by somebody else, I suspect. We publish 6 days a week. Well, that's about it for the thing. As for New Romans, we work with a number of publishers. As mentioned before, including the FT, the AFR, National Geographic and The Economist. At present, we're also leading Nine Publishing's commercial editorial team across the AFR. We're also leading commercial editorial for the FT in the region, providing design assistance to the FT in the region as well for a number of their commercial projects with some leading global brands, including watch brands and hotel brands who are trying to coax people back to traveling again once borders open. We also work with a range of corporates across a number of industry sectors, mostly in the finance and resources sectors, and we work with them on their content, their communications and messaging. And we also do media training. So that gives you an idea of who we are and what we do. Now, on to kind of the approach of how. Now I've thrown this wonderful little presentation together. Happy to put together a little ready reckoner at the end if anyone would be interested. We can do a little artsy ready reckoner, which is we can do that post discussion. No doubt it'll be covered with lots of New Roman branding, but just letting you know. Now, the preferred channel, like Julie, approaching us is email. Or for me as a journo, I'm very old school. I'm a Luddite. I have an abacus sitting next to me. Love email. Best time to get me, and this depends on the journo, is I usually check my emails before 8 a.m. in the morning. So if you're looking to get me early, that's the best time to get me. The rest of the day, I try to ignore them as much as possible. Now, everyone's different. In that email, suggest a call as well, or some sort of follow-up. Just give me a call to action, because that'll get me going. Important, as I think Julie pointed out, know your audience. So know who you're pitching to. So you're pitching to the AFR, for instance. Know who you should be pitching to within the AFR. There's a lot of journos inside there. So who covers that beat that is most relevant to your client or product, and find out with that journal when their section's printing as well, especially if it's not a news story, say it's an IT story or a lifestyle story. Find out when their sections are printing, because the days that they're printing or they're putting the section to bed, which is to get it ready to print, is the days they don't want to hear from you, to put it quite bluntly. So just figure it out So make sure you know who they are, so you're not pitching lifestyle content or whatever at the wrong time. Now, I do a lot of special reports. So if you're looking at special reports. For instance, there's a good calendar. It's a movable feast. It runs all year round in the AFR, and it's constantly changing, changes every month. Covers a lot of topics, so you can get a real idea of where you fit. There's a lot of lists, things like, last week we had most innovative companies list. We've got higher education coming up. We've got best places to work coming up if you're thinking to fit into those. Now, those sort of lists they're put together by Inventium, which are kind of an innovative consulting agency with us. The best bit is look for, and there's a call to action for those rather than approach mid-year or whatever. As I've been in the last week since we did the innovative companies, I've probably been approached by, well, not probably, 11 companies saying, how can I get on that list? But if they just followed it, they probably could have seen when the call to action was, did a bit of research, and been there potentially this year. Also remember that the AFR, depending on what day of time you're pitching, there's 2 news conferences a day. There's one at about 11 a.m. So no one will be interested in talking to you then. And another one about 2:33 where no one will be interested in talking to you. And so you've kind of got a gap between up to about 9:30 people are looking at their email, and then maybe late in the afternoon. So it gives you an idea when the best time to get people is. Also mentioned, I like, and this is a bit old school, I must admit, try and build a relationship with the journo. Just getting in there and dropping in an emails is, there's no round file anymore, but it will get moved on rather quickly. So don't go into a straight fit pitch, just try to build a relationship, find out a bit about the person. So, and once you do have the relationship, don't just call them every time you've got a pitch. Occasionally call them with a bit of background, or, off the record briefing, just something just to keep the relationship going, because then they're more likely to listen to you, talk to you, be more open to your emails. And also, we're looking for someone that we can trust. So it's, it's kind of genuinely looking for someone that's got, good stories and relevant stories at all times. So that's rather important. On the images front, as I mentioned timing before, so that's, for me, it's about 8 a.m. or before. On the images front, we don't need multimedia or newspapers, but we do like good pics. We do like a good picture to come occasionally. We will run pictures, but not a product shot, unless we're writing about lifestyle or something along those lines. We like humans. We like professional shots. Don't like head and shoulder shots. So if you've got like this, it's a no-no. Don't like in front of a whiteboard or next to a indoor plant or anything like that. Something with a little depth in it, and good light, something that's natural, not a team shot, not a picture of someone picking up a award like the plastic molder of the year or something like that. So something that looks professionally shot. And the reason why we want them kind of mid shot or longer is because we can actually make them smaller if we only have a small piece. So it's not a question of just sending a head and shoulder shots in, because there's a lot of them. I would pay for a photographer, actually, even though you might have someone who thinks they're the best photographer in the world in the office. They probably aren't. So that's my feeling about photography. And because we have less photographers in newspapers these days, and we rely a lot on services like Getty, it'd be great. We do like getting good pics, and every editor I speak to says, can you get a pic with that? So just remember, a pic is good. Multimedia, not so necessary. As for the writing a press release, there's a whole bunch of actual do's, and I'm happy to go through those. I'm also doing a thing I've once told someone not to do when they were doing a presentation on a webinar, which is look at notes. Just look at your screen, but I'm looking at my notes. We need a news hook. Exclusives, as Julie mentioned, are excellent. Love an exclusive. Now, a press release itself shouldn't be any more than one page. We don't want to be scrolling down, and if we print them out, because I'm like Julie, old school in that sense, I do like to print them out. I just like them on one page, nice and clean. If the big no is selling a product early. Don't sell a product early. We want a news hook, and if you're going to sell the product, you know, as I mentioned up on the points there, is tell us what legitimate business challenge it does overcome. Ideally, we want something with the fin that's a bit broader, or a lot more broader than a product. So it has to have a news hook. We like something, if you've got a case study or something we can hang it off, that'd be fantastic. We like something that's kind of thought leadership piece as well. So if you've done some research, but it's, you know, it's got to be robust. It's got to have some rigor behind it, and we'll have a look at it. The other thing is, we rarely reproduce much from a press release. So you want to get everything up front. You know, so you need to get the lead, the real guts of it up front. And if we don't have time, because it is deadline, and we don't have time to get on the phone to you, we want a good quote. So get some good quotes in there, some really nice, live, solid quotes. Because if it's just the quote being, oh, we're so proud to be introducing this new product, it's not going to get anywhere. But if you've got something that talks about the industry, and again, the challenge that you are overcoming with what you're doing, then we've got a live quote. If we push for time. Otherwise, we're going to be wanting to talk to you. And so that's important to have details where we can follow up. And also, I know this is probably a difficult thing to do with clients, but don't overthink the press release. I know that there's lots of hoops to jump through, and goes through lots of checks and balances to make sure everyone's happy, and it's put together by a team of about 5 to 100. But it has to be simple. Make sure it's correct, and check for all the facts. But at the end of the day, we're not really going to reproduce much of it. It's just, we want to know what you're doing, what it is, and then we can get back in touch with you if we're going to follow it up. Around that research piece, for instance, New Romans, we just did a quantitative research piece for a client in the entertainment industry. We were able to build a lot of content off the back of that, and we also approached a lot of mainstream media before we picked it up. So who are now picking it up. So that's really that was well done in that sense. Now, on examples, there's a couple that we've done, so I'll just throw the ones we've done up. So Independent Reserve, they're crypto. I know Money Magazine's a bit leery of crypto, but that's, we've got that up the front. That was picked up by the AFR, the Financial Times, Bloomberg, and News Corp. And then because it gets picked up by a wire service like Bloomberg, or it then flows out into a whole bunch of other publications. Crypto Spend, which is a little Aussie startup, again picked up by AFR, Bloomberg, Dow Jones, News Corp, and then spread from there. A really nice story. We just get the lead up the front. That's all it was about. And same with Custom Fleet. Just picked up by all Aussie mainstream media at the time. And at the end of the day, there's some good solid quotes in it. And then we got out 2 people to talk, to talk to the journos. So the journos were getting back in touch with us and saying, we want to follow this up. And so that's how it was. And they're all running about a page long. So it gives you an idea of the ideal length in New Roman's mind and my mind as a journalist. Now, that's for me. So the summary for me, if anything, would be, get the timing right early in the morning, or build a relationship with the journo. I think that's vitally important. You get sometimes, around 100 is probably a record of emails a day of people trying to pitch you something, and unfortunately, you don't read a lot of them. You just don't have time. So, if you just slowly build a relationship over time, you will, things start to work out better for you in that sense. Know your audience, so know who you're talking to, know the journo, and know the newspaper or the magazine or the piece, whatever media your entity is. Know their audience. So get an idea of who they are, and then get an idea of who you have to speak to inside that entity. And solid news angle, as mentioned before. Good imagery, not the product, unless it's a watch or a nice hotel room. And yeah, just don't just flog your product. We need something that's going to push an idea along, a legitimate business concern that's been in some way addressed. And that's about it from me. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mark. That was so direct. I love the honesty, especially at the times of when to reach people. Everybody wants to know when nobody wants to hear from you. So this is really helpful, I imagine. I know I like to know when I'm not bothering people. So it's really helpful. Thank you. What we might do now is just open up to our Q&A segment. So if you haven't already done so, please feel free to pop your questions in the box at the bottom of the screen. And to kick things off, we have our first question, which is, what's an example of a good pitch to you? Now, this could be to either of you, Julia or Mark. And how can we make our own story or pitch stand out? Now, I know, Mark, you did provide some examples there that you worked with previously, but any particular maybe things in those examples that you provided, Mark, that really stood out to you? Certain things, I can even go back to that slide if you like, that you can point out, or even Julia, if you've got something off the top of your head.
Muted me. I guess, it's basically like writing a news story. We want the pitch to have the what, where, why, how, when, and who. And what's your point? How will our readers benefit from this information? Why would I want to hear from you? Why is it relevant right now? And what are your credentials in this space? Also, what Mark was saying about, have some rigor in it. If you have got some research, provide the stats in that and make sure it's actually decent research. Like, if you've interviewed 12 people in the office, that's not research. So, provide that. And there's things that we would never use, but we want to hear that you actually have gone through whatever the issue is. I know Mark talked about it as a business challenge, like what business challenge are you trying to solve? That's fair for the AFR, obviously, but for us, it's more like, how is this going to help our customers? How is it going to help our readers? How will it help them achieve their financial goals? And also, I love what Mark said about the relationship. It's all about relationships. And, as a journo, we've only got ourselves. So we've got to make sure that we're honest and we're doing things with integrity, and we expect the same in return. We expect people to do what they promised, to have the results that they said, and so on, because that trust has to take you a long way. People don't stay in the same jobs forever. So for us, wherever we are, people will talk to us because of the magazine or the newspaper or whatever. But if we're not there, that's all that we take with us. So it's really important for us to keep our integrity. And, we've both been around a long time, and there are people who we know that we wouldn't deal with again because they've burnt us before, and, vice versa. There's people, from the PR side who have been burnt by journos who they will never deal with again. So I think building the relationship and having that trust is really important. And it's also important because there's times where you might have a lot of clients and I'm stuck looking for a commentator in an area. Well, if I've got a relationship with you, I'm going to talk to you and ask for one of your clients. Mm-hmm. Or, if I've got a spot to fill, I will go to the people I know first. And also that's keep in touch, because sometimes at the last minute, I'll be just looking for someone and you'll happen to get in touch at that time, and it's just serendipitous. So, that's all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love the point that you made specifically about why is it relevant now, especially leaning a little bit more to that breakdown that you gave of the year. So things that are seasonal, things that are talking about, trends that are happening in the world, and why that's relevant just makes for an especially engaging piece. So absolutely. Awesome. Mark, did you have anything to add on to that? Or I can move on to the next question if you'd like.
I thoroughly agree with everything Julie just said, I must admit.
Excellent.
And that building relationship is so vitally important. And we talk about when journos, as Julia mentioned, you leave a publication or you move on or something moves on. You know, we always talk about our contacts book and, you know, who we know, and it's about those people that we've, over the years, we've built up as trusted contacts that we can reach out to. So, yeah, I think that's really important. A good example with that crypto spend piece, you know, that was a newsy article because crypto spend had signed a global deal with Visa, which in the crypto space, which was a big story at the time. So we got that up the top. But the thing is, they weren't the first to do it, but the other companies that had done it hadn't actually really pushed that out. So we ended up getting a lot of publicity off the back of it, because, you know, we made a point of actually reaching out to the right journos and actually telling the story. So it's just, you don't have to be first, just have to be best.
Yeah, I love that. That's so true, isn't it? Awesome. All right, I'll move on to the next question, which is directed to you, Mark. As a contributing editor of the AFR, how do you pick out these stories to publish? So what's the ones that have stood out to you? I guess it's a little bit touching on what we talked about already, but is there anything in particular that you would say is the first thing that you notice or the first thing that you look for?
It depends on what I'm writing on, I must admit. So I write a lot on resources and energy, and I do a lot around cybersecurity. So you're looking with cybersecurity, for instance, you're looking for a new angle because a lot's been written on it. And so you want something new. I like around that sort of thing. I like research and rigorous research, and it'd be great if it's Australian related research. We don't have enough of that. There's a lot of global research reports out there, and then they've got Australia as like a paragraph. In Australia, you know, 5 CEOs said this. So if it's local research that's got a bit of depth to it, that'd be fantastic. Energy, it's more news related, I must admit, at the moment. So it's, you know, it's a very a topic that is constantly in the news at the moment, especially with COP26 coming up. Yeah, there's nothing else I'd really say. I do like a good human story, and that's, you know, goes back to the foundations of storytelling, the hero's journey. So if there's a good founder story in a story about a startup or something like that, that's a really interesting story that I often look forward to. And if the founder's good talent and you think they're good talent to talk to, then that makes a difference, I must admit. And that again comes to building a relationship and finding out meeting the talent or meeting that person.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, great. Next question is to both of you, really. Apart from reaching out via email and phone call, which you've said is your preference, are you guys also open to sort of like LinkedIn or any other channels? Even though that email is your preference, are you still sort of open to it, or is that one of those things where you just do not want to be?
I'm on LinkedIn all the time, and I'm happy to have someone reach out on LinkedIn. I also look at it all the time for story ideas and who's doing what in the area. So LinkedIn is a big one for me.
Excellent.
LinkedIn's a big one for me because a lot of people do reach out on LinkedIn, and I'm always looking at, you know, I follow people on LinkedIn. It's my only social media channel, and so I follow you know, influencers on LinkedIn and find out, you know, and look at things like studies that say the Harvard Business Review or people like that are doing, and actually use that as kind of a jumping off point for a lot of ideas. So LinkedIn is a good one. But then again, a lot of people are trying to sell stuff on LinkedIn as well. So it's getting the right.
Very true. It's a delicate balance, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, great. Next question. Will providing you an embargoed press release help in any way? So given that it's relevant to your publication, will you be more likely to cover the story because you'll most likely be the first publication to break the story?
Well, embargoed isn't the same as exclusive. So, you know, there's that. If you get an embargoed press release, you want a bit of a follow-up, like why it's embargoed and are you going to be the first to have it? For me, it's not a big deal because we're not so timely. And a lot of times I look at that and I can't even work out why something's embargoed.
Fair enough.
I thoroughly concur. yeah, so if it's an exclusive, yeah, quite interested. If it's often that sometimes you do wonder, it's got an embargo date on it, and you sit there going, I could go and stand on the Harbour Bridge and shout this out and no one would care. So I think, yeah, embargo, as long as it's followed up, as Julia was saying, and find out why and what's there, that's the key.
Excellent. Yep, fair enough. Awesome. Okay. Well, how open are you both to invites to sort of media gatherings or lunch gatherings to discuss about like latest industry trends or just general networking with companies from the same industry? Is that something that sort of tickles like that works for you guys, or is that a bit of a waste of time for you?
I'm interested. You know, I won't go to all the events. I do like to get out there and see who is out there and what people are talking about. And I like the opportunity to see other media, and, you know, we will always have a chat about the industry. It's interesting because I'm a really shy person by nature. And when I first started in the industry, going to networking events was so difficult and painful, but now it's part of the business, and it's part of your business if you're in PR as well. But I have noticed that the younger journos are not so keen on getting out and about. And I find it odd because I always find that you go and you're going for a particular story, but on the way there or on the way talking to someone else, you find others as well. So for me, it's a great way of gathering news. Personally, I love breakfast meetings because I get into the office, I've already got something to work with. But yeah, it's not popular with everyone in our office, I have to say.
Yeah.
For me, it depends. Right now, after 18 months of rolling lockdowns, I'll go to anything. But yeah, it has to be something that's relevant and I'm interested in, I must admit. I'm not. There's lots of events you get invited to. Just, you know, I'm not that interested in just turning up for a chat and a drink. You know, for me, it has to be something relevant. And, you know, some of the financial institutions do boardroom lunches, which are a bit off the record, which are actually quite handy in that sense. But yeah, larger events, networking events, yeah, it really depends on the topic and who it is.
Excellent. So when you say relevant, do you mean maybe specific to what you're working on at the time, or
yeah, or just, yeah, see what I'm writing about. So if it's, you know, if it's energy, resources, ESG investing, for instance, is one I'm interested in at the moment. So that sort of thing. Yeah,
awesome. And Julia, you mentioned that, you know, the younger journalists don't really enjoy going out and, like, you know, being able to network. What would your advice be if we're looking to reach out to them?
Well, I guess you have to figure out a way to build a relationship differently, and maybe if you get to know the journo, they will come to see you and to go to your events. But I think it's a bit more difficult. I just think from my generation, you just went because you had to go and you wanted to meet the person and so on. And you went there knowing, I guess you're a bit choosy. You know that you're going to get a story. So you're going to go to something where, you know, you'll get a story where, you know, and a lot of them do. So in our office, we've also got financial standard journos, and they put out a lot of stories each day. They need to get them up. They're busy. So you need to make it worthwhile if they go, that there's a good reason for them to go, that they will be able to speak to someone that they probably wouldn't if they weren't at the event. So I guess it's about building the relationship and seeing exactly what they want.
Yeah, perfect. Okay. And this is even just one of my own questions as a piece of curiosity. What would you say would be the ideal way to get your foot in the door and first start or building on that relationship? So an introductory email, would you say maybe touching on some of the work that you've written, something recent that you've posted, something like that to get your foot? Is that something that tends to work for you guys to start just a bit of a rapport?
Yeah, for me, an introductory email mentioning something I've done in the last couple of days that you might have seen or whatever is a great way to start. And then now that we're all relatively free again, you know, have a bit of a chat, and then we can maybe meet for a quick coffee or something like that. But, you know, it's probably, dare I say, an old school way of doing things, but it does work. Yeah, definitely. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for that, guys. I think that kind of wraps up our questions. Thank you for everyone for all the questions, and a massive thank you to Julia and Mark for their time and expertise.
For the questions that you guys might have, or if there are any questions that we didn't answer today or any that you think of later on, please feel free to reach out to us or contact your account manager, and we'll help to pass on those questions to our speakers and get back to you. Just before we move on, or end, I suppose, we encourage you to scan the QR codes on the screen, which will direct you to the many additional resources that we have on prnasia.com. And also a reminder to please provide your feedback in the survey that will appear on your screen once the webinar has come to an end. Otherwise, that's a wrap, guys. Thank you so much for your time. We hope you found this webinar insightful, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
Awesome.
Thank you. See you
Thank
later.
you very much. Cheerio.
Bye.
Thank you.